Let's cut the fluff. These financial institutions, they don't just move markets, they buy politicians. With enough money, you can start buying influence, real power. Let me break it to you. It's not the president who runs things. It's not the politicians in suits smiling on TV. It's the hedge funds, the asset managers, the guys behind the curtain. A couple of years ago, we released a now legendary video, BlackRock, the company that owns the world. It hit over 3.5 million views, but back then, we only had secondhand info. Leaks, reports, theories. Now, thanks to an undercover investigation by James O'Keefe, we've got someone from the inside, Serge Varlay, a recruiter for BlackRock, spilling everything on camera. Boom. That one sentence says it all. Volatility creates opportunity, he says, but what he really means is instability makes them richer. If you want to rule the world, step one is simple. Control an obscene amount of money. Money gets you into the rooms where real power lives. The big boys' table, as Serge calls it. And once you're in that room, everything changes. You see how it all works behind the scenes. The puppets, the string pullers, the system built for them and their heirs. BlackRock controls over $9 trillion in assets. Let that sink in for a moment. If BlackRock were a country, it would actually be the fourth largest in the world by assets, only behind the United States, China, and Japan. They're bigger than the United Kingdom, bigger than Germany, bigger than France. And here's the kicker. Yeah, they own a piece of nearly every major company on Earth. Even if BlackRock just sat still and did nothing, their assets would grow by $500 billion every single year, just by compounding at 5%. That's not just money. That's leverage over the entire world economy. Next step, become so useful to governments, they can't function without you. That's where BlackRock's secret weapon comes in, the Financial Markets Advisory Group. Sounds pretty boring, right? But this low-profile division consults directly with the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, and even the Vatican. They run simulations, stress test economies, and advise on crisis responses that honestly no one else can. Now think about that for a second. If you're the one advising the world's central banks, you know everything before it happens. Interest rates, bailouts, crashes, sanctions. If politicians have been caught insider trading with this info before, what do you think a $9 trillion asset manager is doing with that knowledge? Let's talk about the game behind the game. Buying politicians. You see, most senators in the United States make $174,000 a year. To someone like BlackRock, that's chump change. Offer $500,000? That's nearly triple their salary. And no, you don't have to wire them $500,000 directly. You use campaign contributions, super PACs, book deals, consulting gigs, whatever it takes to stay legal on paper. It doesn't matter if it's left, right, or center. Money talks. Once you've got a few politicians in your pocket, you don't need to pass laws. You influence who writes them. Now comes the darkest part of the cycle, war. BlackRock is now advising the Ukrainian government on how to rebuild post-war and attract private capital. They say it's free help, but honestly, it positions them to get first dibs on every lucrative investment in the rebuilding phase. The longer the war lasts, the more money there is to be made in the aftermath. BlackRock owns stock in defense contractors, so every bomb, every missile, every reconstruction contract, that's profit. Got a friend in government who tells you when America plans to sanction Russian gas? Boom. Another trade. This is why war becomes just another business model. Here's the final twist. Even if BlackRock stopped doing anything today, if they just sat on their assets and watched, they'd still win. Their money would continue compounding. Governments would continue calling for help. Politicians would still come begging. And new crises would only open up new profit centers. They keep a low profile on purpose, Because once people start noticing, the magic breaks. But most people, they're too busy with TikTok, paying rent, or planning their weekend. This world wasn't built for them. They don't want people to talk about them. So what's the formula? 1. Get the money. 2. Use the money to buy power. 3. Use the power to make more money. 4. Repeat until you own everything. It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's just how the game is played. As Scarface said, first you get the money. And once you've got the money, once you've got the power, what do you do next? You protect it. You, the empire. You make damn sure no one else can ever reach the level you're at. Because here's the truth. When you're that far ahead, the only threat is someone catching up. So what do? You rig the system even harder. It starts with creating the illusion of choice. You let the little guys fight each other. Compete for table scraps. Believe that if they just hustle harder, if they just innovate a little better, they might make it big. Meanwhile, you're busy building a fortress around your throne. You influence legislation that creates more red tape, more paperwork, more regulatory complexity, all in the name of consumer protection. But what it does is ensure that only companies with armies of lawyers and billions in capital can operate at scale. You want to start a new bank? Good luck getting past 10,000 pages of regulation. You want to launch an ETF to compete with BlackRock? Better have a decade and a few $1 billion handy. You want to fight the system from inside? You can't even get through the lobby. Next, you control the story. Because if people ever understood how the game was played, it might all come crashing down. So you flood the media with noise. You buy ad space. You sponsor panels. You get think tanks to publish long, complicated PDFs with boring titles like Systemic Risk Management, a multi-stakeholder review of cross-jurisdictional instruments in the post-crisis environment. No one reads that stuff. But that's the point. You want the truth buried in complexity. You want regular people to throw up their hands and say, man, I don't get any of this finance stuff. Perfect. Confusion is control. And for the ones that start catching on, the YouTubers, the rogue journalists, the whistleblowers, you shadow ban, you demonetize, you discredit. You don't need to kill the messenger anymore. You just quietly push them out of the algorithm. Now here's where it gets even darker. Once you've built the machine, the smartest way to protect it is with chaos. Let the world burn just enough. Let there be housing crises, inflation spikes, supply chain breakdowns. Let the people get mad. Let them protest. Let them argue about left versus right, woke versus anti-woke, billionaires versus broke people. It's beautiful. Because as long as they're yelling at each other, they're not looking. They'll scream at the puppet, not the puppeteer. They'll vote harder, march harder, post more hashtags. All the while, you're quietly collecting the fees, compounding your assets, and acquiring even more power during the downturn. And if it gets really bad, don't worry. You can just buy the dip. At this point, you've got governments leaning on you. You've got media tamed. You've got your hands on the money printer. So what's left? You become too big to criticize. You hire the best PR teams money can buy. You partner with the World Economic Forum. You push ESG initiatives, DEI campaigns, and fund scholarships so that people associate your name with BlackRock isn't the villain. They're saving the environment. They're investing in communities. They're better. They're the good guys. Remember? And if you even otherwise, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist, a populist, a lunatic. See, that's the magic. You don't have to be invisible forever. You just have to be. Even empires wear hoodies now. Here's a little bonus trick the elites love. You make sure there's competition, but only in name. Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, these firms like competitors. They're not. They all co-own each other. They're co-invested. They attend the same meetings. They sit on each other's boards. You think you're choosing between brands when you invest, but all roads lead back to the same three names. So while people waste time arguing over which fund is more ethical, the same puppet master collects fees from both. That's not capitalism. That's cartel economics. Let's face it, this entire financial system is unstable by design. The fiat currency gets weaker every year. Debts are ballooning. Assets are artificially inflated. And most people are one paycheck away from ruin. But for the guys at the top, that's not a bug. It's a feature. Because when the next crisis comes, guess who the governments call? They call BlackRock. They call Vanguard. They say, help us manage this collapse. And once again, the guys who broke the system get hired to fix it with taxpayer money. And when the dust settles, they own even more than they did before. Here's the bitter truth. You can't beat these people by playing the game. The game was built for them. It was tested, iterated, and reinforced over decades. It's not broken. It's working exactly as intended. They have the cash. They have the information. They have the rules written in their language, on their turf with their referees. So while you're out here working 2 jobs, trying to build your side hustle, reading 10 ways to save more in 2025, they're buying the platforms you're using. They're leasing the real estate under your feet. They're your labor before you even realize what happened. So what do you do once you've built this empire? You go dark. You stop making headlines. You stop giving interviews. You let the talking heads on CNBC speak for you. Because real power doesn't need to brag. Real power doesn't want to be seen. The goal now is simple. Stay out of sight, but remain in control. Let the people argue. Let the politicians pretend. Let the influencers keep dancing for views. You already won. You've captured the flag. You're just waiting for the rest of the world to figure it out. But by the time they do, it'll be too late. So just make sure you're not the one getting played.